5 years, Fortnite's building mechanic will be dead. I've thought about this a lot, and by the end of this video, I think you'll be convinced too. This is the story of building in Fortnite. To really explain this properly, we're gonna need to go back to where it all began. Fortnite started as a zombie survival game, and it was in development for years. Epic developed this cool system where you could build forts to defend yourself from zombie attacks. That's what it was initially meant for. But the game launched and it wasn't that successful. It was even about to be canceled. So they had to try something. They saw that all the most popular games out there were battle royales. So they said, why don't we take the weapons and assets from this zombie survival game and make it into a battle royale? And why not just let them build forts in this battle royale as well? Might be an interesting way to spice up the gameplay. And as you guys know, this worked a lot better than expected. In the beginning of Fortnite Battle Royale, there was barely any building. Most people would just use stairs and walls at most, but this simple building mechanic caught on like wildfire, and it really set the game apart. But why? Well, in most other battle royales, it really rewarded camping, and if you were caught out in the open, you were pretty much going to get eliminated. But with the Fortnite building mechanic, you are now able to play this battle royale in a lot of different ways. You could still camp in a bush or hide in buildings, but now if you push out, you can naturally build cover around you wherever you're at, even if it didn't exist. Building brought in a lot of creative ways to play the game, and there were so many different combinations, including the editing system, which was absolutely brilliant. This mechanic feels like it was made for player versus player, even though it was initially made for zombie survival. But after some quality of life improvements like edit on release and turbo building, nowadays it feels effortless once you get the hang of it. Players then start building tall fort structures in the late game to use it as a safe spot to take shots. But eventually, some early pioneers of building developed an advanced strategy to try to take on these forts. They called it the ramp rush. Players would place ramps and walls as they progressed towards a fort or another player in order to get the advantage on them. But what happened if two players ramp rushed towards each other? This was the beginning of build fights. Two players used builds to put themselves in a superior position in a fight. Players quickly figured out that the best position to be in was having the high ground. So naturally, people started to figure out what the best ways to keep high ground and take it. And that's when we discovered 90s, using ramps and walls and floors repeatedly to increase your height while moving 90 degrees every single time. Building is starting to get crazy, and now we see the true skill gap of Fortnite starting to form. But this is where the problem started. In the beginning, we were all playing the same game, but now some of us have different goals. There's a split amongst the community. People actually start to grow resentment towards players that could build really well. Casual players felt like the sweaty players were ruining the fun of other players and taking the fun out of Fortnite. And this is when Fortnite competitive really starts to kick into gear, and now people are actively trying to improve their builds every day in Playground and Creative. But the people who play after school or after work or only on the weekends, they don't want to spend their few precious moments on the game practicing in edit drills and building in creative. They just want to hop into the battle royale and hope for a victory royale. But here's the thing. If there's a sweat in their game, their chances of winning drops dramatically. And it doesn't stop there. The divide gets wider and wider as building keeps improving. We have box fights in the World Cup, face waves, retakes, and build fights, piece control being developed in early Chapter 2, and nowadays there's triple, quadruple edits. The gap has not stopped getting larger ever since. And that brings us to where we are today, the present. Now we have the competitive community who are players who are usually playing in the cash cups and tournaments. Some of these guys watch some of the old pros like Mongrel and Benji in the early days and want to be just like them. And their goal is still to improve in Fortnite and become pros, or they're already pros. Then you have the casual community who play a lot less than these competitive players and are more focused on the weekly content updates, new seasons, battle passes, and the cosmetics. The thing is, both of these communities are playing completely different games now. This presents a problem for Epic because they have a hard time balancing between the two different communities and the way they play Fortnite. And quite frankly, it's impossible to balance for both. You can't have any fun items in arena or competitive, and even in the normal BR, they seem to be hesitant to add items that could be game-changing or over the top. I mean, think about all the recent items that have been added in Chapter 3. Maybe the goo gun is a little bit overpowered, but of course it was quickly removed from competitive. But a lot of the new mythics, for example, are super safe, and it seems like Epic is trying to just put out items that sort of work for both modes, even though the reality is they fall short on both modes. These issues have caused strains in the competitive community, and they have been very vocal about how they feel like they are not being heard or addressed. And competitive players are typically going to be complaining the most out of anybody who plays a game because obviously they're taking the game very seriously, and because they take the game so seriously and they're very passionate about the game, it makes sense that they want to be heard, they want issues and bugs to be fixed, and they want to feel like Epic cares and hears them so that they don't feel like all this time they invested into the game has gone to waste. And now that I've set the stage, I can finally talk about, if nothing changes, Fortnite build mode is going to be forgotten. It's one simple reason. New players aren't playing build mode. I would say the majority, if not 80 to 90% of new players that Fortnite acquires are starting off in zero build, and they are not touching build mode. The thing is, it's extremely intimidating. And as soon as they stop getting bot players and they start going against real builders, they instantly get stomped. The reality is zero build is a lot more approachable for new players and returning players. Think about the battle royale experience. It's 100 players and anything can happen. You might be the last person standing. But the reality is, in Fortnite, with how good the players got in build mode, if you're an average or new player and you're in a lobby that has some serious builders, you actually don't have a chance to win. It's very slim. Whereas in zero build, it's a little bit more of a traditional BR where, yes, you know, there are players that win a lot, but anything can happen. You can catch someone off guard. You have that small chance that new players dream about, but in build mode, that hope has been crushed. The skill gap is just way too big. And because of this, competitive is in trouble. Think about it. Who watches competitive esports? It's the players who play the game, but they want to watch something they can somewhat relate to. Think about Valorant or Overwatch. And when they watch the pro players, they see some sort of resemblance between what they play and what the pro players play. However, in Fortnite, your casual player, when they tune in to watch a competitive Fortnite tournament, they see items removed, they see vehicles disabled, they see a completely different version of the game than what they're used to. That connection is now gone. We had it in early Chapter 1, but it's no longer present. And with less players watching competitive events, there's less players that want to go competitive or go pro in Fortnite. Now, this might paint the story of why competitive mode needs changes and competitive could be dying. But what about build mode in its entirety? Because build mode isn't inherently competitive. There is public matches that are meant to be casual. So why is this building mode gonna disappear? So here's the state of things. New players are joining the game, but most of them are going to zero build and they're staying there. If a player gets burnt out, I mean, the game has been out for 5 years. People are going to step away from the game. When they step away, their building skills will drop. And when they come back, they're not going to have a great time getting ranked on. There is not an influx of new players that are becoming builders and going through that process. They're so far behind, it's pointless to even try. And build mode is going to disappear. But here's the thing. I don't want build mode to die. I truly think there are changes that can be done to build mode to make it more accessible for new players, but it would involve completely revamping the building experience. I know that people who have grinded to learn how to build are probably not going to be a fan of some of these suggestions. But here's the truth. I played a really high skilled game when I was a kid. It was called Guns the Duel and it had insane mechanics. It really reminds me of the mechanics in Fortnite because only a small percentage of the people playing in the entire world have truly mastered the mechanics in that game. But eventually the casual players in that game quit and all that was left was just the sweaty players who were really good and playing against each other all the time caused all of them to burn out. The game eventually got shut down. Build mode has the same issue, and the only way to save build mode is to reinvent it. One of my ideas is that your builds actually have more HP when you first start building, but as you start spamming builds, if you spam them too quickly in a short period of time, your 20th or 25th builds start placing with a lot less health. This would reward players who are a little bit more strategic with their builds and are able to get the most done with the least amount of materials spent. And listen, I don't have all the answers. I have a few ideas I wrote down here, but the reality is Fortnite developers and the competitive players are best suited to come up with ideas that make sense and help bridge this gap. Another big issue is all the ping related advantages that currently exist in builds. It turns away players who are playing on 60 ping or higher or playing in different regions. It would be cool if wall taking, which is the main way you engage in a box fight, turned into an actual mechanic instead of it relying on ping. The goal would be to make building strategic and actually rewarding, because nowadays, if someone hits a really cool shot or play in Valorant or Overwatch, they get praised on Reddit, YouTube, and TikTok. But if someone posts themselves quadruple editing or doing an edit course and building really fast, they actually get roasted by the community. And it's not like we are a very toxic community. There's just a disconnect. The Fortnite we play today will look nothing like we play in 5 years. Maybe there'll be first person mode. Maybe it'll be in VR. Maybe there'll be brand new building pieces and new systems that reward skill while not punishing new players. We'll also have the Unreal Editor, aka Creative 2.0, and maybe some genius will create a new, better version of building that is skillful but still beginner friendly. But if nothing changes in build mode, it's slowly gonna phase out. New players are not really trying build mode. They're playing zero build or creative, and that's the end of the story. The Fortnite Battle Royale that we fell in love with in 2017 has changed, but other games have died because they stayed the same. So change is good, and I'm hoping we see more of it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching.